welcome Laurence Johansen. She's researcher. She will briefly introduce us to the test before invest services of the DIH before we jump into the main topic. And we can also welcome Adnan Imeri. He's senior R&D scientist, and he will present the main topic of today. And of course, just before we begin, I would like to bring your attention to the question tab in the chat. Feel free to drop your question there anytime, and we will address them in the Q&A at the end of this session. So I think we can already start, and I give the word to Laurence. Just before we start, also, can you see the screen and can you hear me? It would be good if we get quickly a feedback so we make sure that everything runs smoothly. I just wait quickly that someone responds in the chat. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. Welcome, Laurence.
Good morning.
Give the word to you.
Okay, just if I can, yeah. Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this 17th DIH webinar of the year and the last one, which is today dedicated to blockchain applications for industry. So just to give you a quick insight of where you are today, you are here with us, the DIH, and all the partners of this network are dedicated to supporting you into adopting new technologies and AI. So we are in charge of the test before invest services of the DIH, and our role as a research and technology office organization is to help you cross the gap between fundamental knowledge and market application. So we help you develop proof of concept and explore technological solution so you can safely adopt them. The services that we developed between the DIH are threefold for test before invest. First, the tech talks, just like this morning, the webinars, where you can discover some applications and technologies. If you want to go further, you can come with us for a hands-on test. These are workshops where you can test technologies based on real industrial use cases. And then, if you want to go forward and consider digitalizing in some direction, we can support you with the digital opportunity scoping and help you find which value lies into your data and scope the best technical solution for you. For this, we rely on all our testing infrastructures. We have a visual for the visualization of large-scale data and support to collaborative decision-making. We have digital twins. We have a cognitive environmental lab, an immersive arena, connectivity workshop, a mixed reality lab. So we can put all those infrastructure at your disposal, and usually when we organize the workshops, we organize a visit of those labs, of some of those at the same time. Just so you know, we are situated in Belval. So about the three services, first the webinars just like today. So over 1 hour, you get an overview of the fundamentals of a technology. We have already treated some of them. And this morning will be blockchain. Upcoming next year, we'll have in March a webinar on digital twins and one on private 5G networks. Then the hands-on tech tests I was talking to you about, these are 4 hours workshop in Belval at our premises. And you can test a technology based on real use cases. On 15th January, maybe, we'll have the blockchain workshop that will be animated by Adnan, which will do the webinar this morning, and Thierry. So it will be both in French and English. Then on February the 5th, we'll have a workshop on visual inspection, that is image processing. One on March on data storytelling, and on March the 26th, so we'll have two the same month, we'll have one for the design of control rooms. So be sure to contact us by email. I will give you our address at the end, or to check on the DIH website. And if you want to go further, we can go for the digital opportunity scoping. So the first step is about data exploration. We sign an NDA. You send us some data sets, and we clean them, we wrangle them, and we do first modeling and visualizations, so you can see which value lies in your data, and if you need to acquire more or treat them in another way, to be able to go for AI or digital solutions. And then we can scope the best suited digital solution for your business challenge and organize a hands-on test, just like the ones I showed you before, but dedicated to your own data in-house for your teams. And these services until end June next year are totally financed for industrial SMEs. So be sure to contact us. These are the deliverables that you get. So contact us. Here are our contact emails. So we are at your disposal to organize lab visits, dedicated workshops, or tailor the best solution for you. But right now, enough talking. I will leave the ground to my colleague, Dr. Adnan Imeri. He's a senior scientist at LIST. He's specializing in cybersecurity, distributed systems and architecture, machine learning and AI, and blockchain. He's leading the research and development for decentralized application for the EU Horizon Europe projects, at LIST. And today, he will cover the fundamentals of blockchain, enterprises application, show you some of our R&D activities at LIST, and will give you some practical development knowledge to help you understand and implement this transformative technology. Adnan, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Laurence. Thank you for participating to this webinar. And I'm really glad to share with you some of the technical components of the blockchain technology and their applicability on the industrial use cases. So for now, I can basically confirm that you can see my screen. Yeah, I think so. All right. So on this presentation, basically I will present distributed ledger technology as a concept, as well a particular concept, or let's say instance of these concepts, such as blockchains. And I will guide you from the fundamentals to real-world impact brought by this technology. So the idea is to understand how this technology is transforming various industries and to which extent currently the state of play is. So to give you a better idea, I have separated this presentation in 4 parts. And the first part is related to the fundamentals of the technology. The second part is what are the current applications of the blockchain technology in an industry. Then I will show for you some of R&D activities that we are currently performing here at LIST, which are not related to the, let's say, financial industries, but are related to more connectivities and the cybersecurity, but of course relying on the blockchain. And the final part, or the fourth part, will be related to the hands-on, and we will see which are the technical components or fundamental components that we potentially need in order to design and develop a blockchain-based application. So I will guide you on the first part on the concept of DLT, the architecture of the blockchain, consensus mechanism, smart contracts and decentralized application, and standards for the tokens which are used to various use cases in the industry. The second part, as I mentioned, will be the real world application. And on the real world application, we have selected, let's say, some of the most notable use cases and where we see the most impact brought by blockchain, such as supply chain and traceability, asset tokenization, financial services and decentralized finance, the healthcare and identity management, energy, and governance. As I mentioned, the R&D activities are related to edge computing, IoT, DAO-based swarm management, related to the swarm computing, and how we apply all these components into the real-world application. For the hands-on, we will highlight the structure of decentralized application and tools that we need, programming languages and framework, testing, and how we deploy this sort of application, and what are the best practices and some resources that you can already explore in advance before you hands-on or before you really intend to invest, so you can go through them and benefit from such knowledge. Okay, so we start with distributed ledger technology, and the first question is what they are and how we ended up to so many DLTs and so many, let's say, synonymous solution where a lot of let's say concepts are already existing till today, but then we exploited and we went one step further. So DLTs before the blockchain, they existed, and they exist even in today's world, where we have a DLTs related to our bank account, DLTs related to our personal data, and plenty of DLTs. So in general, DLT is nothing else, just a kind of decentralized database, which is managed by different nodes or different participants distributed geographically. And each one of these participants maintains a local copy of the ledger. That is what is called ledger, is potentially distributed among various nodes. The data which are recorded to that ledger basically is proven or is validated via a consensus mechanism. So the consensus is the guardian who says that the data are correct. And on top of that, DLTs have specific characteristics, for example. So they are decentralized, meaning that no one as a single entity controls them. So all the data are distributed across the nodes, and that potentially don't make one single point of failure. So they are transparent, so all participants can view the complete history of the transaction. So that means that we don't have a hidden transaction potentially, and we can prove any transaction from the origin to the destination. So DLTs are considered immutable because records which are stored on this DLT are immutable, and it's potentially impossible to alter them. So as I mentioned before, network agrees before the transaction is validated. So the consensus guarantees this sort of mechanism. So if we compare DLTs with a centralized database, there are many differences that we can spot. So in a centralized, we have a single server who maintains the control of the data. Either can be a single server, or it can be a data center. While in the distributed ledger, we have a multiple node which are distributed across various locations. So there is no single data center or no single server. So speaking for the single point of failure, which is characteristic of the centralized solution, system is really vulnerable if one of servers fail. In contrary to that, distributed ledger are still available, or let's say the data is still available even one or two or several nodes fail. So in terms of administrator control, trusted third party really manages the data on a centralized server, while it is completely the opposite when we speak for the DLT, because we rely on math and the consensus to replace the intermediaries. So the consensus is the one who is considered the one a validator for the data that we deploy on DLT. So modifiable records are part of the centralized database or data storage. They can always be altered, changed, let's say altered, deleted, or even removed from the ledger. While in the DLT, the difference is that once the data are stored there, they are permanently stored, and they are tamper resistant because they are proof of the history guaranteed by the consensus, enable this set of information to be permanently recorded there. So speaking for the DLTs, one type of the DLT, or the specific type, let's say, of the DLT is the blockchain. So we can always say that the blockchain is in reality is just one instance of the DLTs. And the difference between general DLT and the blockchain is that the data on the blockchain are organized on container-like or blocks solution. So all the transaction and interaction happen between various user or various contexts of the application. All the transactions are hashed and stored in a block, and each block is linked to the previous block. That means a lot when it comes to the data immutability. And the blockchain comes with a security feature such as hashing, which is a cryptographic fingerprint of each block. So, which means that in hashing, any small change that we perform, that is reflected to the new fingerprint or new hashing. That enables the immutability on the blockchain based on at least three things. The first one is data is distributed across the nodes, hashing is performed on top of each block, and once we potentially change some of the local data on the block, that will be denied due to the consensus algorithm, which is the third components to maintain the state of the data on the ledger. So speaking for that, users can in reality sign the transaction by using digital signature, which is a public key cryptography to verify the authenticity of the transaction. So all the information or the blocks, let's say on the blockchain, are distributed in a peer-to-peer to all the nodes on the network. So basically, blockchain came with the features of guaranteeing certain level of immutability. So speaking for the blockchain, we have various types of the blockchain. We have permissionless blockchain, where we have a type of Ethereum or even Bitcoin, where anyone can join, can read the whole bunch of transaction, or can participate with the transaction. And it's that type of blockchain is fully transparent and decentralized. These are the use cases where mostly we have the decentralized finance, non-fungible token or NFTs, or cryptocurrencies. We have second type of the blockchain, which is consortium blockchain. And in the consortium blockchain is that only the invited parties can be part of it, compared to the permissionless blockchain where everybody can join freely and start to perform transaction. Usually this type of the blockchain, like consortium one, they are used more in a business mindset, I would say, or a business industries, because only the party who belong to that interaction can see the transaction, and that's due to the privacy and access to the information. We have another type of blockchain which is called private or permissioned. This is a fully controlled blockchain. Of course, it increased the performance, but then it's remain again centralized, which it's linked to the centralized database or centralized control of the data by a single entity. So it's not the best solution. However, that really works in case of enterprise solution or banking. And we have a hybrid solution where combination between a public permissionless blockchain is linked with a private blockchain, with the elements of the private blockchain. And that's the case when businesses needs both transparency and the privacy. So they keep the privacy basically on a private blockchain, and they make the traceability of the activity or business needs on the public chain. So how the life cycle of one transaction works on the blockchain. So usually a user who accesses the blockchain either via the wallet or either like as a local virtual machine or a local entity, they create a transaction by using the digital signature, and that transaction is broadcasted to the network. On the second step, we have the validation. So nodes verify the authenticity of that transaction and check for the potential double spending. So miners bundle. So the third step is block creation. So miners basically bundle a valid transaction into a new block. So they collect certain amount of transaction, let's say within 1 minute or 10 minutes, depends on which blockchain we are using. They bundle all these transactions and they form a new block. So once they form a new block, they mine this block with the consensus protocol, and networks needs to reach agreement using this specific consensus mechanism. So once they reach this agreement, this block is definitely added to the chain or linked to the previous block, and it is distributed amongst all the nodes. Final result from the first step will be that an immutable, transparent record that cannot be altered without consensus from the entire network. So that means that once we have signed it, it is confirmed on the blockchain. It remains there forever, and the only chance someone or even ourselves to change that one is to recreate a new transaction to override that one, to let's say to recreate a new transaction related to that one, but that specific transaction we won't be able to change it anymore. So that's the powerfulness of append only or immutability on the blockchain. So the fourth step was quite important, I would say, the consensus. How to reach agreement that the data that needs to be validated or to enter to the blockchain is the correct one. For that one, we rely entirely on protocol-based rules called consensus mechanism. So we have proof-based consensus, like proof of work, and we have a stake-based, I would say, consensus where you need to have the stake. So the most known, I would say, consensus protocol is the proof of work, which is exploited or used on the Bitcoin and Ethereum Classic for now. So the miners have to compete to each other in order to solve the mathematical puzzle, and that requires a lot of efforts, like a lot of work to do. And so once the miners somehow solve the puzzle, they broadcast the knowns or the solution, and then the others prove that the right in reality the solution is the right one. In a proof of stake, which is currently used by Ethereum 2.0, validators, so there is another term here, it's called validators, stake a lot of tokens or as a collateral, and they are selected either randomly or based on the stake they have in order to mine or create a new block. So that creates a lot of efficiency. However, it loses a bit the centralization compared to the proof of work. However, that works pretty much very well if you have validators who have a lot of stake and there is no interest from them to work against the protocol from which they are gaining yields or benefits. And of course, we have other consensus mechanisms such as delegated proof of stake, a practical Byzantine fault tolerance, and a proof of authority. So trusted validator are selected in a private chain. So these are the core, let's say, consensus protocols, which are core components for the blockchain mechanism. So another, let's say, great innovation on top of the blockchain is the smart contracts. So blockchain in general are isolated environments, meaning that we cannot easily connect to them and deploy a new application. With the emerging of Ethereum, we have the notion of the smart contract emerged. And the smart contract is nothing else, it's just a self-executing program which is stored on the blockchain, and that is automatically executed once some of the predefined conditions are met. So a simple analogy between the smart contract and the vending machine would be as follows. So in the vending machine, you need to input the money, select the item, and the machine verify itself if the money is there, if the item, for example, exists, and it automatically delivers the good. In all in this process, there is no intermediary. So there is no person, let's say that I need that item, for example, and you have to pay the money to the third person, and the person have to take that item and bring it back to you. Is the opposite part. So here everything is it's a direct interaction between you and the vending machine, which is an analogy with the smart contract. Smart contracts are basically these codes which we deployed there on the blockchain, but they have some certain characteristics. So one of them is automated execution. So anytime this precondition are fulfilled or condition are fulfilled, a smart contract automatically will be executed. So we don't need any human intervention in order to execute the smart contract by being able to select, let's say, some of the information from any deck. Again, the core concept of immutability. So once they are deployed as a code, they cannot be changed. So terms remain exactly as we have agreed. So if we agreed on something and then we turn that agreement into the smart contract, so once we deploy it on the blockchain, there is no chance that either me or you or someone else will change these terms. And another characteristics of the smart contract is that they are transparent. So all the parties involved can see the code and can verify what the code is doing. And as well, all the execution happens on the blockchain, so then we can trace back all this sort of execution. We have to think in a way that the code of the smart contract is the law itself. So the agreement becomes the law. They are truthless, so we don't need to have a trusted intermediaries. So the code is executed exactly as it is programmed. They are decentralized, so they run on a distributed network, so no single point of the control or the failure. So nobody controls them. They are controlled according to the rules that we have set up. And they are cost efficient in terms of they reduce intermediaries and they reduce a lot of burden, let's say, activities until we execute the final settlement. Of course, there is cost on gas and execution of the smart contract, but that's just a, let's say, technical aspect that you need to consider. What sort of logic follow the smart contract? So the core logic of the smart contract is basically if then else, meaning that it's simple, straightforward, say question, and it always comes with if condition is satisfied, then execute option A. otherwise or else execute option B. These simple conditions, they basically enable a very complex automated workflow, because you can put as many conditions as you want in order to decompose the complexity within the smart contract. Okay, so where do we start and where do we kind of have some result with the smart contract? So we start from code to the verification. So code is created and it is deployed. So usually a software developer would write some codes which are translated from the domain of application or from the request from the user. And this code include the condition, action, and rules are deployed on the blockchain. For example, we can deploy a escrow contract that holds $10,000 until the goods are delivered. And once the goods are delivered, this amount is released. So then as a second, let's say, step, or there should be an event which triggers the smart contract. This event can be a payment which is received, let's say goods which are delivered, data which are reached, or from the internal or external sources. And once this condition are kind of fulfilled, the smart contract will be executed. So what is the state of the smart contract on the blockchain is always on the listening mode for these triggers, for these events, so then that contract can be executed. Smart contract basically, as let's say, third step, they perform a lot of verification. They check if all the conditions are met, and then they check it not just in a single node, but in a various node. For example, if the amount received is correct, and all these pre-authorized condition, for example, are checked before the contract is executed himself. So once all the preconditions, as I mentioned on the step third, are met, then we start with execution. So execution goes and checks according to the predetermined parameters, perform the actions needed. For example, let's suppose if the goods are delivered, then release the escrow or release the amount. Or if the price is, let's say, less than €100, buy specific item. All of these are predefined conditions. So once the execution is completed, we have a permanent recording of all the action of the smart contract. So input parameter, execution, output parameters, all of them is recorded in immutable way in a blockchain, including the transaction recorded with a timestamp, ownership update, for example, in the blockchain registry, and all the parties involved in the action, they will receive a notification, meaning that the confirmation for that transaction is completed. Okay, for example, you have if you want to push a real estate, there are some few steps that you need to do. For example, the first step would be a smart contract deployed with conditional terms. Let's say 500K price for a property, and as well you need to have the property identification and the buyer and the seller address. So once the buyer deposits 500K USDC, which is a stable coin or a US dollar, then to the contract address, the contract on the step 3 automatically verify the funds are received, seller owns the property, title is clear. So contract executors transfer the NFT or the deed of sale to the buyer, and in the same, let's say, transaction, 500K to the seller. So it's kind of exchange, but it performed in an automatic way, and all of these interactions are recorded on the blockchain. So what's the timeline of doing this? Would be around 15 minutes with the cost approximately $50 with the currently price of gas in Ethereum. In a traditional way, that would take around 3 months, I would say, and cost would be up to 15K to perform this transaction. Okay, So next, smart contracts are exploited for the application from the various domains. So one of them is the term of decentralized application, where smart contracts are exploited on the back end as a service, while the front end of the application uses still the same traditional technologies of the web interfaces. So what are the decentralized applications? So these are the applications that run on the blockchain instead of centralized server. So the backend part for the technical aspects is smart contract deployed on the blockchain. Front end is usually React.js, Node.js, or any HTML-based or CSS user interface, while the storage is decentralized, exploiting IPFS or interplanetary file system, where we can deploy a large amount of data. So the question is, why to use DApps? So they are completely censorship resistant, so no single entity can shut down the activities of the DApp. Zero downtime. Imagine when I was speaking for the distributed aspects of the blockchain, we say that the same data, the same smart contract is distributed in all nodes. So one of them, several of them fail, still we have availability of the data due to the peer-to-peer access of the network or distributed access of the network. So privacy, no central database holds the data user, so the users somehow control the information and what they put on the blockchain. For the transparency, we have open source, and the whole smart contract or the backend or the activity can be auditable. So there are leading examples of the decentralized exchanges, like a decentralized application like decentralized exchange or lending protocols or NFT marketplace, where all of them, they use the beautiful user interface, but they run in reality on the blockchain, exploiting the benefits of the blockchain. So another concept which came with the blockchain and the smart contract is decentralized autonomous organization. So DAOs, or decentralized autonomous organization, are community governed organization supported by the smart contract and the token holders, rather than being controlled from executives. Let's suppose we have an organization, but everyone on the organization has a voice, and the voice can be heard by voting. How this is happened? This happens on several, let's say, steps. If we want to perform some changes on an organization, we need to propose these changes, and that is translated on the smart contract on the proposal. So members of the organization can submit this change as an idea via a proposal, or should be like a round of debate and discussion, why and pros and cons, and then finally it should come the time for voting, which is the third step on this sequential execution of the DAOs. Then once the execution, so it depends on the result of the voting, if the proposal is accepted, uh, then we have execution of this proposal, meaning that smart contract automatically implement the decision. So there is no chance to manually divert the verdict of this voting, because the smart contract has the control on implementing the proposal. And the fifth step is that everybody can see what happens on this voting on this proposal, and basically see the benefits of the smart contract on implementing directly it. So what are the direct benefit? I would say is every token holder has a voice. It's more democratic in the sense that everybody can vote, and it is 24/7. So it is not on a specific time for voting, but then during, let's say, 2 weeks, you can vote from anytime to anywhere. So it's transparent because you can see all the decision on the public ledger, and you can see how the voting happened. There are real examples. For example, we have MakerDAO and we have Uniswap DAO, which are extremely good examples of of how the DAO works in reality. For example, in Uniswap, which is one of the largest exchange or crypto exchange, or the treasury part is controlled by the token holders rather than being controlled by a single entity or by a single person. And then we have fungibility. So there is a concept which some of the tokens or created digital assets from the blockchain can be swapped in one-to-one manner. So fungibility means that items that are interchangeable and identical to each other in sort of value. While we have the opposite part where we have non-fungible, and this is related to the NFTs, items are unique and cannot be replaced by another identical item. So on the fungibility part, so €1 has the value of €1. $1 bill can be exchanged or can be swapped to one another bill of $1 or euro. However, in non-fungibility means that, okay, for example, if you have seed A1, it's not the same seed as B2. So even in a building, we have 10,000 or 100,000 of let's say components or apartments. None of them is same value as the other. So everything should be unique, and they cannot be replaced. So as a key characteristic of fungibility and non-fungibility is that for the fungibility, they can be exchanged into one-to-one, each unit worth the same, and they can be divisible, so can be split into smaller unit. While the non-fungibility, for example, each item has a distinct attribute, so there is something to be distinct from the other. So different values varies based on the properties. So some of the components may have more properties, some of them they have different properties. So, and they are not divisible, so cannot split the ownership easily. So they either belong as a whole to a specific person, and they can be factorialized, but then they cannot be split in terms of pieces of it can be decomposed. All right. And then in terms of blockchain, what do we have as a technical standard to support us on that? So we have ERC20, which is entirely related to the fungible tokens. So all characteristics of fungibility are implemented. So any sort of token that we want to implement for our business case, and which we think that is fungible related, then we can use ERC20. Then if you think that we want to represent something which is like unique, if you want to present some piece of art, or if you want to present some real estate tokens or components, then we switch to something which is unique. For example, in real estate, you have really unique elements of each flats or each houses, and then you easily distinguish the value based on the properties. So it depends on the use case. We can either select one of them as a technical standard to build our smart contracts. Okay, so now we switch to the second part, which is related to blockchain real-world application. So how blockchain creates a business value? That's the question. So we try to understand the context, benefit, and executive value proposition. So we are going to be through this study, and we see that there are potential value proposition on top of these use cases that we are proposing. So the first one is the supply chain or supply chain management. So it involves a lot of intermediaries. It creates information source delays. There are a lot of fraud in this kind of domain. And this lack of visibility of all this activity cost business billions in ways, counterfeit goods, and compliance failure. And how blockchain can help is by creating an end-to-end visibility, so to track the products from the origin to the customer in almost real time or even in real time. So every transaction on any occasion is registered to the blockchain, so we know that it is immutable and we can rely on the components of the technology. So it combats counterfeiting with cryptographic proof of origin and custody chain. So counterfeiting is one of the major challenges on the supply chain. So the goods are reproduced, but they are not belonging to a specific to original producer. However, they are fake products which are circulating on the supply chain. And the blockchain with the cryptographic proof, especially with the proof of origin, would help here a lot to reduce this counterfeiting aspects of the products. So then further we have a reduction of the paperwork. So a lot of papers are involved in any activity related to the supply chain. So by automating the validation of the compliance, payment, and custody, really would help to reduce this paperwork activity. And of course, one of the other, let's say, items that the blockchain can really fit is faster settlement. So via the smart contract, we can perform an instant verification to eliminate dates rather than having like weeks to perform a settlement. And smart contract would really help on reducing it. So the value proposition for that would be that return of the investment would be around 30 to 40% reduction in logistics costs, potentially 80% faster dispute resolution because you have all the set of truth of transactions, and near zero counterfeit infiltration for the specific supply chain. So we have a real example of Walmart, we have IBM Food Trust blockchain, and we have a risk mitigation, for example, on the real-time ESG compliance trackings, ethical sourcing verification, regulatory reporting, automation. So for any product, you can perform automatic reporting. Another domain, or let's say business context, is asset tokenization. So traditional assets such as real estate, art, commodities, they really suffer from the illiquidity. So high transaction cost is another issue, and they are very limited in terms of to which extent they are exposed to potential investors. So the idea of factorialization of ownership is really an added value brought by blockchain, which means that asset can be factorialized and you can own a piece of, let's say, part of the factorialization rather than having the whole asset. Suppose one apartment in Luxembourg can cost like $1 million, but then if that is tokenized like in a square meters, potentially you can own few square meters rather than being able to afford it as a whole, as an investment strategy. So by tokenizing this asset, basically is the opportunity is increased on the trade aspect by allowing traders to trade 24/7 rather than just on specific business time. So you have a lower barrier. So instead of investing 100 million, you can invest, let's say, you can reverse, you can invest 100 few thousand rather than being urged to invest millions. And the smart contract basically execute trades in minutes, so you don't need to wait for the settlement for a week. But the smart contract is working as a backbone between you and the asset in order to settle the ownership and perform all the necessary activity. So the tokenization is something real and it's happening quite a lot. So the market opportunities are considered around 16 plus trillion assets to be tokenized by 2030. And we have real examples of the tokenization. So we have resort tokenization, we have real estate, we have piece of art, and different asset class are basically involved. So we have real estate, we have private equity, bonds, commodities, intellectual properties, and credit, carbon credits. So these are some of the asset class that you can find on the market now, tokenized, or people are still willing to create tokenization on top of this commodity. All right, so we have financial services. So basically, this is more to enable the direct payment, particularly traditional payment systems. They're using many banks when it comes to transferring to perform a cross-border transfer of the money. That is as well costly, and it takes a lot of time. So the blockchain brings the opportunity to perform a peer-to-peer transaction. Either that can be a lending, borrowing. All these activities can be done in a minute, cheaper, and they are available for anyone. So automated market making. So in reality, you don't need to have a persons behind these activities. So it's the smart contracts who perform all this activity, and the settlement time, again, it's a matter of minutes rather than being days and even weeks sometimes. So that reduce definitely the transaction cost and increase the settlement aspects, and of course increase the opportunity to have more operation on the financial services rather than we have on the current ecosystem. Another, let's say, business case, or let's say business context, is the healthcare, and that is related to the patient data and patient record history. So usually you have very fragmented data for the patients, and then medical records show that the errors performed on the diagnosing of the disease based on the fragmented data are immense, and they require like an urgent correction and the access for the doctors before they give a final, let's say, verdict on determining the disease. And that is not currently possible from the system that we have today, due to the data is centralized and then somebody controls the information. In that part, blockchain can really help. And the help of the blockchain comes with by unifying the patient records, performing a single, let's say, record standard for the patient, and the patient has the access control over this data. Of course, to track pharmaceutical and manufacture drug products, to eliminate the counterfeiting. So this is related to the supply chain. So then a lot of drugs are counterfeit and they are put on the supply chain. And of course, clinical trial integrity. Immutable trial data prevents manipulation, increase of the research credibility. So you don't create a made-up data, but you have a real proven data from the patient. So the data privacy, patient own their data. We will see the next slide. We use the concept of self-sovereign identity, and they grant time limited access to a specific research organization to maintain, and they maintain complete audit what happened to their data. So it's not exploitation of the public data, but it's private data with verification proof on allowing to access or revoking the access to the data. So it's considered to reduce up to 150 billion annually on data reconciliation, fraud prevention, and administrative overhead. So there are MedRec, and as already there are initiatives on how to exploit the blockchain to standardize and to exploit the medical data, including the list on working on the genomic data on a specific project. All right, so another business case is the digital identity. Identity theft affects a lot of persons and the businesses, and that's where the centralized database cannot help us at all, because they are kind of honeypots for the hackers and the ones who wants to exploit or perform ransomware attacks on the data. A user have no control. As a user in a lot of digital services, we don't have any control on the digital identity on our data as well. So as well, for the companies, it's really a high cost to pay to perform KYC, anti-money laundering compliance, which is around 500 million annually to perform this activity. So blockchain can help by supporting the self-sovereign identity. So the user owns and controls their data, their identity. They share only what they need and when they need. So they don't share everything. So for any activity that you do in a service, you don't share everything. Then we have the concept of verifiable credentials, so cryptographically provided credential without revealing the underlying data behind. So that means that we can send some proof, but we don't need to send all the data. So I can prove that I graduated, for example, from University of Geneva, but I don't need to send my diploma and all the data related to my diploma. For example, we can still, in addition to that, we can enhance the privacy aspect by using zero knowledge proof, where I can prove in reality that I have certain age without revealing my birth date. So this increased the privacy aspect of the data. And of course, that would really help KIC, know your customer, services to be reused and to save banks millions in duplicate checks. So once I am verified in one of the institution, my proof, my verification claims will be it's easy to it's not forbidden to be shared among the institution, because they are just a cryptographic proof. They are not my personal data. So yeah, what we have today as a SSI anchors or SSI enablers, we have EPSIS, European Blockchain Service Infrastructure, where List have several projects on top of EPSI. One of them is diploma verification and trace for you for the traceability. And we have a lot of other, let's say, examples like a Microsoft ION, where they enable a verification of identity by exploiting the blockchain, Bitcoin blockchain. Yeah. So we have the other one, the other business case can be the governance and the voting. So blockchain somehow can serve as a tamper-proof, and every vote can be cryptographically secure and auditable. Of course, that's not if the vote is like hidden, where it is the case where the vote needs to be public. And by using the governance, for example, we can exploit the immutability properties of the blockchain to prevent fraud with the land registry, and to enable a secure landing against the land titles. Public records. So if you want just to share the proof of birth certificate, license, permits on the blockchain, so we can do that without any concern, as long as the personal data remains on the user wallet. So this helps a lot of countries, especially the ones who have like a lot of dispute on the land registry. So the blockchain can serve as a single source of truth for the ownership of the land. Yeah, then another use case where, let's say, a lot of investments are done in terms of intellectual thoughts is the energy and sustainability. So how we could exploit the blockchain to push the sustainability, so that the neighbors can sell the generated energy directly to the to the neighbors. So, and then we have carbon credits, and we have finally the grid verification, where the data and all this information are to be shared among the stakeholders. Okay, so Intellectual property. So I will wrap up in 1 minute. So intellectual property are the cases where we can share our content, either that be a piece of art, copyright, or money or NFT. And the idea is that how we can monetize the property work that the artist or even ourselves we can create in the meantime. So these are the some of the business cases. Education and credentials is well, for example, if we have seen that a lot of, let's say, employers, they want to inflate the diploma, and the blockchain can really help here to verify the credential, verify the truth behind the diploma by making the traceability of the training of the school, of the diploma taken from the previous years. And we have here in Luxembourg a project called Epsilux, which enables the diploma verification. And we have Trace for You use project which enables the verification of the traceability of the resume credentials for the employers. Okay, so finally, in terms of R&D, we are performing after swarm computing and the blockchain. So we try to perform swarm intelligence and trace the activities of the swarm and verify the data on chain. And we run privacy by design because we use SSI and we use other object federated process in order to create performance data. Okay, the last part is hands-on, and I will quickly just show you what are the essential tools, knowledge for the developing a decentralized application. So what you need to know, basically, as a first step is to get a little bit familiar with the programming language. Primarily, we use Ethereum, which is kind of like JavaScript-like. You can use a Viper or Rust, depends on how you feel. While that's for the backend, and while for the front end, you can essentially use any web-based technology which really works. Then for the framework, we have Hardhat, we have Truffle Suite, and we have Foundry, and they act as a local blockchain, so simulating all the network and simulating all the characteristics of the blockchain. Okay, libraries we can use connect to the blockchain via the Web3, either can be Web3.js or ethers.js. And we can have a testing at the local environment by using Ganache and Weiler or test network which are operating online, such as Sepoya or Goerli. Usually we teach the students or the trainees how to set up all of these components on the workshop, which is between 3 to 5 hours. And then we need to go step by step to see how they can set up all these components. All right, this is the same. So yeah, for the workflow, we already mentioned all these components. So we have a few challenges which we have to mention on the blockchain. So we have a scalability, we have energy consumption, regulatory uncertainty, user experience. But for all of these, we have already a response. Like for energy, we have a proof of stake. For the scalability, we have a layer 2 solution. Regulatory uncertainty, we have now European unions have published MiCA framework for providing clarity, and we have a CBDC exploring with the local authorities. And the user experience, it's already kind of completed because you have a lot of Web3 authentication and interface and educational content, which help us to really distinguish technological terminologies and concepts. As a future trends, I would say we have enterprise adaptation acceleration. Central banks and digital currencies are a lot of investigation happening there. I mentioned that the IoT integration for the data proof and for the data verification. And of course, the buzzword for now, but in this kind of good fit with the blockchain is the AI. So all the data provided for the AI can be proven or verified via the blockchain. All right, so these are the key takeaways. So we have seen that a lot of industries are already impacted. We have a new business models which can be developed on top of blockchain. Many challenges which have been identified in a past year are somehow almost solved. So the blockchain now is in a pole position to really create a value. And we have seen that there are a lot of adaptation acceleration from the institutional organization. So it's not just a technology. Blockchain definitely is not just a technology. It's new foundation for the digital trust and the value exchange for this scenario. So it's not just sort of technology in a sense of definition, but it can bring a little bit more than technology components itself. So it's trust and the value exchange via the mathematical proof rather than intermediaries. Okay, thank you very much for the attention. I would be happy to respond any potential question you might have.
Thank you very much, Adnan. I don't see any questions in the chat. So, but in any case, we have an information tab. There you see all our speakers today, and you can also access their LinkedIn profile, and you can always ask them any questions. They are happy to respond. If you scan this QR code, you will also land on our event page, and you will see our future events of 2026. If you Sorry, I disconnected somehow. Really sorry. So, thank you very much for this very last episode in 2025. I hope to see you again in 2026. If you want to test this blockchain use cases, you can contact Adnan directly, or you can contact the list. They are happy to help. And I hope to see you again in 2026 for future webinars. Thank you very much, and I wish you a wonderful weekend. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.